I'm back with this Toyota Sequoia. It's the one I just put a rack and pinion on. And it's about 3 weeks later, something like that. And it's here for other work now. We're going to put a front right caliper on it. So that's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to start on some more work, but let's go ahead and get this done first. Basically, the car is off of the ground right now. And this tire is very hard to rotate. Okay, so that's the caliper sticking. You know, that causes your new brake pads to wear down very quickly. It overheats the rotors. And of course, it steals your miles per gallon because it's like you're trying to drive with your brakes applied at all times. Simple things turn into big problems. And here we are again. So basically, the hard line did not want to come off of the caliper itself. Even though I was using heat from the very beginning, because I know how these things go, still, it didn't want to come off. That nut is now rounded off. So the next place had to come up here. And this took a good amount of fighting and heating, but eventually it came off. So what this tells me is now I have to replace this hard line, which means more work, more time, more materials. It sucks when things don't go according to plan. And it just seems like a common thing on this car. So now I have to remake that brake line. And in case you're wondering, well, why didn't you buy the brake line? I did think about that before I started ordering parts for this car. And trust me, I looked for that line. I couldn't find it anywhere. So I said, you know what? Let's just cross our fingers and say 3 Hail Marys. And this is why I don't throw out small pieces of brake line like this one right here, because it's more than enough to make this small line that we need. So looking at the ends right here, it does not have like a double flare. It's just to me it looked like a standard single flare. So it shouldn't be too hard to replicate this. So we have our new copper tubing right here, and I have 2 new fittings. Let's go ahead and grab one of them and test it on both sides. So let's try it on new caliper first. You see that threads in perfectly. And let's try it right here. Threads in perfectly. So these fittings are going to work for this car. So now it's time to straighten out the brake line. And I got this tool right here. You feed the line into it and it's going to straighten it out. Just trying to get it straight more or less. It's kind of straight. So all you do is go ahead and feed it inside of here. Just give it a few pushes and then pull it through the other end. And just repeat that a few times. And every time you do it, it's going to get easier and easier. And there we have it, guys. It's relatively straight and it's good enough to work with now. So here I have my deburring tool. This end is going to deburr the ID and this is going to deburr the OD. So pretty simple stuff. Let's start with the OD, which is the outside. Just want to turn it around and it's going to basically chamfer those edges and get rid of any burrs. Looks pretty good. And then you turn it around and do the other side for the inner diameter. That looks really good to me. So now we could start the process of flaring. Alright, so I pretty much got everything set for the first flare. I got the dye in here already. Let's go ahead and give it some lubrication right where it's going to make that flare. Everything is locked down. Just trying to make sure it goes in the right place. Trying to guide it in. And you just have to go till it stops. You don't got to kill this thing. Like right there it stopped and just back off. Alright, so I made a mistake earlier when I said that the flare on the caliper is just a standard flare, because I just did the first operation right now and this turned out to be just a bubble flare. Okay, so we need a inverted flare. So I have to do another operation. We just have to do the second one now. So yeah, I did make a mistake when I was talking about the flares on the caliper. But no big deal. Go ahead and run this in and make our second flare. That's it. Let's back it off now. And there we have it, guys. So let's go ahead and have a look at this flare. Hopefully you can see how nice that turned out. Let's grab the original one so I can show you guys. I know it's hard to see, but that's the original one. Now that we have our flare on one end, do not forget to put your fitting on. So we'll go ahead and slide this over. That's gonna stay right there, nice and perfect. All right, now we can start making our bends to try to match the original piece. And guys, for the other side, it's pretty much the same exact process. I'm just gonna make whatever bends I have to make it fit, and then flare the other side, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so here goes the finish line. You can see it's kind of like an S shape. Now it looks weird, but it does fit. I've already test fit it, so let's go ahead and install it. One thing I have to do is once I get it installed, I have to turn the steering wheel left and right, make sure it's not going to come in contact with anything. So there we have it. The line is installed and it's completely tightened down. At this moment, I just have the bleed valve loose and I'm waiting for fluid to start dripping out of here so we can start the bleeding process. Like I said, I still have to go turn the steering wheel, make sure this isn't going to come in contact like with the CV shaft or anything. If it does, I could always bend this in a little bit more. It's not a big issue. But on such like a tight radius, you want to try to minimize how tight your bends are. You don't want to go crazy with it. As you can see, it's looking pretty good. And that line is not going to rot away, guys. It's not going to turn into what that line is, where nothing wants to move and all that crap. So if anyone ever wants to take this line off in the future, it'll come off without any issues. And there goes our brake fluid dripping out of here. So we could go ahead and close this now and we'll begin the bleeding process. All right, so I've been bleeding the brakes. Let's go ahead and start it up, and I want to keep good firm pedal pressure on the brake, so just to be 100% sure we don't have any leaks. So the pedal has nice good pressure, and what I'm going to do is basically just hold pressure right here, like good strong pressure on the brake pedal. I like to do it for about 30 seconds. So once I'm done here, we'll go look at the caliper and make sure nothing is dripping. All right, so the 2 points we want to check were actually 3. Number 1 is right up here up top. Now my finger is nice and dry, so there's no liquids on it. I just want to feel around here and see if it comes out wet. And no, everything's nice and dry. That's why it's really important to clean everything with brake parts cleaner before you start testing for leaks, because you don't want basically a false positive. So as you can see, nothing is coming off on my finger. All of this is again completely dry, even after running the engine and holding real heavy pressure on the brake. And of course this one is already tightened down. So guys, we are looking good here. I don't see a single drip or nothing at all. Let's go ahead, pop the wheel on it, and I'll put the car back on the ground, and we'll turn the steering wheel left and right and make sure this brake line does not come in contact with anything. So I got it back on the ground, and I turned the steering wheel all the way to the left. So let's go underneath the truck and look at that brake line. Turn off my light real fast. But as you can see, it is not coming in contact with anything. Trying to get it to focus for you guys. You can see it's far away from that CV shaft, and the steering wheel is completely maxed out. It won't turn any further left. So we are good to go. So I just got back from a test drive, and the brakes feel great on the truck. If anything, I could argue they feel even better with the new caliper. It stops really good. So let's put it back into the garage and look at what else we have to do. Something that the owner just brought up is a rattling heat shield. So it didn't take long to find it. It's gonna be this one right here. You can see how that's super annoying. It looks like there's 2 places where it should bolt down, but it just kind of rusted away. It sucks because the ideal time to fix this was when the catalytic converter was out of the car. But yeah, so now I'm gonna have to try to work around this. Is gonna be a nightmare, but we should be able to get this fixed. All right, so the heat shield is pretty much done. It's all bolted in place. You can see, and here there is no more rattling. It's nice and solid. So I put the first washer in right there, took the nut off, And after the first one, this thing was pretty solid, but if you're gonna do it, you might as well do it right. So the one back there was a lot more difficult to get to, but I did end up getting it. You can see it's got the new washer in it to clamp down on the shield, and this thing is 100% bolted down. It's not gonna rattle anymore. Of course, those nuts were a pain in the butt to get off, so you can see I had to pull out the torch here just to get those nuts off because they were rusted in place. But that's pretty much it for the heat shield. I'm happy with the way it turned out, and this is a good repair that's gonna last a long time. So next thing we are doing is pretty much all the spark plugs as well as the valve cover gaskets because they are leaking. If you look down there, you can see how that looks all moist and wet. And pretty much it's the same exact thing on that side. The valve cover gaskets have never been changed on this vehicle, and they're just leaking. So as you can see, I already pulled out the 4 spark plugs on this side, and here they go right here. Honestly, they look like they're burning pretty good. It's nice to see that the engine is running well. All the spark plugs look, or at least the ones on this bank, they all look consistent. Everything looks good. Oh, I just got a metal splinter. Do you see it? Damn you, spark plug. See that? That's what I get for trying to show you guys shit. Ow! I got the valve cover off of this bank, and the engine looks really nice inside. Let me turn off my lights. See, you have that nice gold color. It tells me that the owner is pretty good with oil changes, because people who don't do their oil changes on time or never, it tends to get all gunked up. It gets real black and tarnished and just looks nasty. Same thing underneath the valve cover. Has a nice gold tint to it. Looks really good. Now, one thing I am noticing is that all of the screws for the valve cover gasket as well as the spark plug so far, everything's been very loose. Like, these things are just coming out like way too easy. And that's just over the years, things expand and shrink and things like that, and the fasteners become loose, especially something that's holding on a gasket. Eventually the gasket is going to become old and brittle, and it just kind of shrinks, and then the fasteners holding on the valve cover actually become loose. Yeah, I could just feel how brittle this one is. It just doesn't feel very good. So we'll get this all cleaned up. Can't just slap the new gasket on just yet. We got a lot of cleaning to do before we put everything back together. I've decided to start with the spark plug tube seals. So you can see the old ones are brown, or they've turned brown, and the new ones are blue. So I have to pry out the rest of these. They are a real pain in the butt to get out of here. So let me work on this and get this all set up. So I got all the spark plug tube seals installed as well as the new gasket, and this thing is pretty much ready to go back on the car. So I'm just going to focus on the engine now and do all the cleaning over here and then just pop it on. Really, guys, there's nothing much to see here. Plus, this truck doesn't fit in my garage like comfortably. We had the same issue last time, whereas if I pull it all the way up so it clears the garage door, then I don't have any space to work up front. It's about to start getting dark soon, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this side. Tomorrow I'll do the other side. So that's pretty much it for this side. You can see everything is put back together and plugged in, and everything is just ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead, pull it out the garage. We'll just leave it right here in front of the garage, and I'll finish up the job tomorrow. All right, so I got the valve cover off of the driver's side, as you can see, and this side was significantly more difficult than that side because that side is pretty open. But on this side, there's a ton of stuff that's in the way that has to be moved out of the way. So amateur tip is zip ties. Okay, you can see right here, zip ties. Right here is zip ties. So the whole point of this is there's so much stuff in the way that if I were to get rid of this zip tie and this one, the harness would fall down and land right where I don't want it to be, as well as the fuel lines that are going to be in the way. And it just makes, number one, removing the valve cover more difficult. But more importantly, putting in the valve cover with the brand new gaskets is going to be way more difficult if all this stuff is in your way. So think of it as a third hand and just use the zip ties to hold everything out of the way, so it makes doing the job a lot easier. As you can see, with zip tying things out the way, I have just like a straight shot of where that valve cover could go in when it's ready to go back on. Okay, so the valve cover is reinstalled. You can see the blue spark plug tube seals right there. So everything's all set. Even the bolts each got new washers on them, and there's a new gasket that goes right here, right underneath the oil filler neck. So got that installed. and it's pretty much ready to put everything back together, and this thing will be all set. Yeah, it's a little chilly inside of here. Anyway, I'm just washing my hands right now before I get in the truck. Everything is put back together 100%. Everything's plugged in and good to go. So let me finish washing my hands and we'll start it up for the first time. Start it right up. No issues at all. Sounds good. No check engine light indicating that I left something unplugged accidentally. So everything's looking pretty good. I'm just gonna go ahead, let it warm up and take it out for another test drive. And everything's working nice and smooth. Don't hear any rattling underneath the car from that heat shield anymore. Engine doesn't skip a beat, it's just running like a top, and the brakes feel good. So I think that's just about it for this car. So I'm gonna go ahead and park it and the owner can come pick it up.